April 17, 2020. Mr. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. The White House. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, NW. Washington, D.C. 20500. Re, China out, from an R.O.K. Patriot to President Trump. Dear Mr. President, many Koreans are currently fighting hard in order to survive, losing families and grounds for living all of a sudden, due to the willful spread of pandemic China virus toward the entire world. While watching the ever-increasing number of victims of the virus warfare in the U.S., we recognize clearly that you are having the most difficult time in pursuance of keeping the lives and wealth of your people. The reason why I write to you in the midst of this ordeal is that we believe that the entire human beings on our planet Earth will be able to live a long humane life founded upon the justice and human rights, only if and when you and the United States have won the war against pandemic caused by CCP virus. This is precisely the reason why the Korean people are more interested in your presidential election, for which we have to wait more than half a year, than minding their own general election for the General Assembly. By the way, the Moon regime committed another big fraud in the election the other day. You are making right judgment and decisions based on it that China is responsible for the virus and pandemic. We all believe that only you can make China destroyed and can give us the liberty and peace in Korea and in the entire world. If you look back, China has always been a vexatious neighbor to the surrounding countries with invasions and destructions. Only a temporary peace was there whenever there was a war among the constituent provinces. China as unified has never been a good guy. That China is now attempting expressly to subordinate entire population of the world to the emperor's power by making them its slaves. What made it possible to so attempt? It stole intellectual property and military secrets from the US and Europe and exploit cheap labor to achieve whatever is now praised a brilliant economic development. In furtherance of making selected European nations and the ROK in particular its economic colonies, it is attempting even to brainwash US politicians and radical press to betray the US sovereignty. So, there was frivolous impeachment attempt and some European leaders did in fact turn back to you. With false impression operating on their minds, the Chinese warriors then tried to implement the foul scheme to conquer the world by spreading the Chinese virus. They further willfully influence UN organizations such as WHO and put the US and all other nations in the peril. We admire your excellent emergency measure to investigate the origin of the China virus and decision to denunciate WHO. The ROK, which has been neighboring China 5,000 years, is suffering damages beyond description. China has always been the aggressor and infiltrator, while repeating divisions and unifications by itself. In the long history, it played a headache for all the Asian neighbors. It operated on the North Korea to invade the South and, when that regime was defeated by the US military, joined the Korean War without declaration of war and poured out so-called Sea of People infantry, killing 38,000 young Americans. Since then, it was assisted by the US unprecedentedly in economic development and yet started again to aggravate neighboring nations as soon as they got rich enough for bloody betrayal. It virtually devoured Tibet and segregated Taiwan. Korea, albeit it is a close ally of the US, could not be free from their continuing threat of amalgamation. China expressly started to keep South Korea at bay as independence-loving President Park was elected. By abundance of evidence during the impeachment process, Chinese surreptitiously dispatched Sea of People students and Korean defects back into the so-called candlelight radical demonstrations, which became the driving force for the leftists' insurrection and finally the impeachment process. They operated on the fake judges to oust the legitimate president by unprecedented sham judgment of discharge for lack of intent to honor the Constitution. As the result of their interference, they could establish the puppet regime in South Korea. The nerdy-looking Moon, of course, you remember well. He turns out to be the worst enemy in the entire history of Korea. This is the precise reason why Moon did not reject the sudden influx of the China virus-inflicted sea of people despite the strong objection in January by the medical associations. The border is still wide open for Chinese exodus to Korea. The Chinese visitors are treated like loyal families at the expense of dying Korean residents for lack of care. China has lately advanced the habitual scapegoat for the advent of coronavirus to the US. When it fails, it is now spreading another rumor of the two-endery resurgence of the virus. You will never know which way the villains will jump and revamp, unless and until you bring light legally to the wrongdoings of the principal and its conspirators and accomplices. Senseless bureaucrats in Korea as well as in European countries are still subservient to China's blunt lies and schemes and invite added calamities to their own. It would stop, and the fate of those countries will be blessed only if and when you have won the war against China and won the election in November. To be ashamed of it, Koreans are not capable of coping with the aggression by that gigantic enemy where they can mobilize 1.3 billion sea of people, equipped with technology stolen from you and Europe and assisted by North Korean belligerents. China further have control over internet warfare and is effectively blocking and distorting free press all over. In our situation, we have no other choice than asking your favor again of saving our sovereignty, as your government conferred upon us the independent status of a nation by overcoming Japan and further saved it from the 6.25 Korean War. Winning the war against China does not necessarily mean that it will make only Korea to have blessing of freedom and peace, but it would also mean that you have accomplished the greatest justice, protecting people of the US as well as of the entire population on Earth against the weapons of genocide such as nuclear weapons, pandemics, chemical warfare, and cyber attacks. We are hoping that you will for sure win the war caused by China, bring the war criminals to the international judicial tribunals for proper punishment, and further punish the wrongful politicians, witch-hunting journalists, and foul businessmen who have been so selfishly and cowardly indoctrinated by the radicals and leftists to become betrayers and traitors. Our success at the China front will obviously mean the end of North Korean dictatorship. Genuine patriots of Koreans that love you and that you loved will then be able to remove the traitors and betrayers who illegally ousted legitimate President Park Geun-hye, thereby destroying Korean sovereignty at the whim of Chinese communists. We will thus continue to be the best ally of the US to join you as a strong and reliable partner in pursuing world peace and human prosperity. We will remain wishing you to win the China virus war and further win the presidential election. May God bless you. Jong Taek Lee, Director/Editor-in-Chief.